Welcome to Thack Ironworks. How are you doing? Today I am testing an anvil, namely this anvil right here. Okay, so the company Vevor, I have no idea how to pronounce that. Let's go with Vevor, shall we? Reached out to me and asked if I would test one of their anvils, and for that they would give me the anvil. So this is the closest I've come to a sponsorship yet, and I jumped on the opportunity to do that because who doesn't want a free anvil? So they sent it to me, and rather than doing the whole unboxing on camera like you hipster millennials would want to see, which is all trendy in your beard oil and your tight jeans and lumberjack pretend costume. Anyway, I digress. I decided to cut to the chase. I've got this thing on a stump and I bolted it down, so it's basically ready to go. First impressions of the anvil, it has nice width for the size that they are. They're really kind of maxing out the face width for the weight of the anvil, which I think is a good move. You always want to have a wide face if possible. I'm a little skeptical about this little arch in here. I believe it may be done to reduce weight on the thing, so bring the cost down. This anvil, by the way, I think is listed at $300 or something like that. So it's very inexpensive, made in China, and I'm not going to bias myself with Chinese quality now, but I'm going to give this an honest test. So I'm a little skeptical about this arch here, but like a bridge or I-beam, it's designed in such a way that it's got structural dynamics, so I'm not going to be concerned about it until we actually get to using it. Other thoughts on it, it's kind of unclear on their literature. I've seen drop forged at one point, I also seen cast tool steel, and I also seen cast iron. I'm gonna just chalk that up to a lack of understanding of the English language perhaps, and you know, throwing some terms around. To me, this thing is cast tool steel. By the look of it, I can see a seam that this thing was cast, which would also be indicative of drop forged, by the way, but drop forged would have totally machined holes, the Hardy hole and the Pritchett hole. These have a flashing in. Very obviously they were cast. So cast tool steel, I'm guessing something like 4140, which is the typical steel. Most of the anvils that I have in the shop, the more modern ones, were something like a 4140. Before I begin with this, just a couple things I also noted. The Hardy hole seems fine. Like I say, there's a flashing in there. It's going to need some machining. It doesn't look totally square to me, so it might need an hour or two of cleanup with a die grinder to get it working. The Pritchett hole, a little bit of an oddity to me, in that this is like a London pattern or English pattern anvil where it's got the step down to the horn, and it seems to be an odd placement for the Pritchett hole, which is typically used for drifting out holes or punching holes, having it as a backer there, and it doesn't really work with the step for that purpose. What I do know when I lagged this down is that both of these holes are directly over top of the fastening holes. I don't know, maybe that was just a design consideration they did there. So other than that, as I say, nice wide face. The horn a bit stubby, but it looks to be a reasonable shape here. This also should get some cleanup to, so before I start, I usually dress the anvil. I'm just gonna grab a grinder and quickly do that before we begin. So let's just pause and do that. Okay, so I just did a quick dressing on there. It needs more than that, but just for purposes of this video, just to get it up to a running speed here. Typically, the radius on the face opposite you, you want to have a pretty gentle radius there. I would say that's about maybe 1/8 of an inch, a little bit more radius. So like a 1/4 inch round bar, if you imagine that, it's about that curvature. You want something with a pretty generous radius on there so you're not cutting into your work. Over here, I'm going to leave this radius sharper, so because sometimes you do need a sharper edge, but generally where you're doing most of your work, and this is where most of the work happens, you want a gentler radius. I just took the flashing off the horn. I actually would grind the entire horn, get the paint off of there, and clean up some of these anomalies here, but just racing through for purposes of this video. So that's that. Before we begin, let us do the infamous ball bearing test. All right, so a typical test for an anvil to test if it is a good alloy and a decent heat treat is to use a ball bearing. I've got a 3/4 ball bearing there, which I've dropped. Now, by bouncing that onto the surface of the anvil, you want to see how high it bounces back, what sort of return you get. And let's just do that now. You got a good beat on there, Eric? So you can see it pretty much comes back to the same height as where I dropped it. That indicates that we've got a good alloy and it's got a nice heat treat. So the anvil is optimal as far as what we want for usage. Let's go over to an old-fashioned anvil here. We've got my Peter Wright from middle of the 19th century. So an anvil that is at least 150 years old, I would guess, well used. This one not cast steel. This would be traditional anvil where it would have been made out of several pieces of iron that were forge welded together, and then a hard face was welded to the surface. So that's how anvils were traditionally made up until the 20th century, till we had the technology to be able to do cast tool steel. So let's just see how, and it seems to return pretty good, about back to where I started. So this one, again, a good working anvil. Now, let's go to this, back over here, if you would. Recently, somebody came to me and gave me this anvil, and they were quite excited about giving me this tool. They thought that this was a nice gift, and I was like, wow, thanks, man. Cool. Because right away, I could see that this is one of those cheap anvils, the cast iron. So let's just see what happens when we drop the ball bearing. So you can see a vast difference. Zero return, basically. That thing is just barely making it back off the surface. This anvil is what we call dead. So it doesn't have the energy and the liveliness that you're looking for in an anvil. Not a good tool. It's also, that indicates that the face is soft. The body is probably just cast iron and it's so soft. Not going to stand up. It's going to start chipping and wearing. This is not a usable anvil. Okay, moment of truth. Wow. Okay, impressive. You can see it there. That is bouncing basically back to where it started from. That is a lively anvil. That means good alloy, good heat treatment. So far, so good. Impressive. So let's get some hot steel on it and just see how it responds. All right, so first impressions, I'm good. I think it's fine for the size of the anvil. It is it's performing decently enough. It rings like crazy, and I think that is two reasons. First of all, it's on a stump. Typically, with my anvils, we keep them on a box of sand. I don't know if you can get that, Eric, if this here is full of sand. And with a larger anvil, that tends to work quite nicely. You have 100% displacement. It doesn't do anything to remove energy from it. You still have a nice lively anvil, but it's not nearly as loud. And then we go to the traditional one here on a stump. You can see this one rings quite a bit too. This one rings more. That would be a criticism that I would say for that. I think it has a lot to do with that arch, if not everything. And, you know, for me, not ideal, but as far as weight and price for a beginner anvil, I think that's there's nothing wrong with that, and you just have to wear ear protection when you're using it. That ring is eventually going to deafen you. Okay, I'll just get it hot again. I just want to play with the horn a little bit. All right, as a general rule of thumb, as a smith, you want to get the largest anvil possible. There's something about the ratio between the hammer size and the anvil size and return and stuff like that. At least that's what I was told. I don't know if that is bro science or if that is legitimate, but it certainly stands up. If nothing else, the larger the anvil you get, the easier it is to straighten bigger pieces. Having said that, for its size as a 40 kg, or which is say 88, 90 pounds, something like that, for its money, pretty decent. I'm impressed. Cautiously optimistic that this is a decent anvil. I'm going to put it into rotation and with my student anvils here. I do quite a bit of teaching, so I'm going to get it in the front lines and have it go through its paces with courses and things like that. I need to put a couple 100 hours into it and just see how it weathers the storm. But by all indications, seems to be a pretty decent chunk of tool steel. So that's, I'm saying thumbs up for Vevor, whatever. So thanks for joining us. Oh, and I would like to say I'm sorry about dissing you millennials. You are my biggest demographic. I don't know why I went off on that tirade. So just forget everything I said earlier. You guys are the bomb. So that's it for today. Please join us again. Oh, I would love to hear your comments on this. If I missed anything, if you have any questions about this, want more information, but you should be able to Google this Vevor and check out their anvils. Eric just informed me he can put a link in the description. They're able to do that now. What technology? He's a millennial. So, thanks for joining us. That's it. Back out. See ya!